And now, Kyle and Steven present another episode of the Go F Yourself podcast. It's Fix. Really? Well, that's embarrassing. The Go Fix Yourself podcast.
Welcome to the Go Fix Yourself podcast. Today, we are joined by Derek Haukaas, the senior audio engineer over at Frostline Studios. But senior audio engineer is not all that you do, Derek. But hey, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're very honored that you graced us with your presence. We did we do this every once in a while. Like we'll post on Instagram at Go Fix Yourself podcast, and we'll be like, "Hey, who do you want to hear on the podcast sometime soon?" And then about one person will respond
after
to
the
that.
crickets,
Usually,
yeah, we get somebody in there.
yeah, usually one person, and it's usually my
Naming
mom.
themselves.
Yeah, no, but someone named you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it was crazy because you were in Juneau at that time, doing a lot of stuff on like, I think the folk festival or something like that over there. But anyway, so I was like, yeah, that's great. And so I texted you. I was like, you want to come on the podcast? And you were like, yeah, sure. So, which is awesome. So we're glad you're here. Thank you for making the time, dude.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I did say that you were the senior audio engineer at Frostline Studios. There's probably some people who are like, what does that mean? What do you do on a daily basis? But let's start with the first one. What does that mean? And tell my parents, they live in New York and they don't know anybody I know or anybody cool, really. Let's be honest. They don't know anybody cool. I'm the coolest, me and my brother. But so, yeah, tell them who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So my main job is audio engineering, and that basically entails primarily recording all different sorts of things, podcasts, voiceovers, ADR sessions, bands, singer-songwriters, all sorts of really fun stuff. It's setting up a lot of mics. Wrapping cables is a very large portion of
that's on the
resume.
That's,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
the musician lifestyle, dude.
It really is, yeah.
And if you don't know how to wrap a chord right, what are you doing with
I
your
know.
life?
Oh man, I've got stories from some of our interns of it's been
What's the
a mess.
proper technique?
Over under
Over
is what
under,
most
okay.
people say,
Yeah.
but my thing is
Oh man, you have a whole thing.
I do. You listen to the cable.
Listen.
Oh,
It'll tell you where it wants to go. You just
All right.
follow it.
I love that.
Sometimes it's not just over under. It's
My cables at home though are just like you try to do the over under thing and they're like, nah, don't want to do that.
You're not listening
And
to
so
your cables.
I put them on the pegboard. And I'm just like, fuck you. Like you're gonna live with
get the
that.
elbow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I used to do that. And one of the sound guys from like Bible camp years ago, and I was like wrapping up my cord from playing guitar, and he was like, what are you, like he yelled from like the back sound booth, and he was like, what are you doing? I was like, whoa, bro, this is my cord, man. Like he got so angry. I think he was projecting.
Yeah.
Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
So let me be clear. What's the over under? Because I've always been a elbow guy. So I mean, I understand I did
There's
it wrong.
nothing wrong with elbow. You
There
just have to buy. You're gonna
They're
have,
like there is.
you're gonna have to
church
buy-
yelled at you.
you're
Okay.
gonna have to
Like-
buy new cords.
And then under.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
So if you're watching this
Over.
on the video right
Yeah.
now, you're getting
And
a
under.
special treat.
ASMR.
Can you hear this?
Yeah.
That's
Okay, I get you. So,
I'm in. See you guys.
Smaller than the big loop around the elbow.
You can do
essentially.
it big, but I just didn't have very much
Gotcha.
real estate. here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I know. Now,
Okay.
Now next time I
So yeah,
do
you're
anything.
recording a bunch of stuff, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen, videos or music videos of people in a sound studio, recording studio, and there's just like this big table of knobs and sliders, and so you're in front of that.
Yeah, and just a heads up for everyone listening. most of those knobs all do the same thing. So it's
Oh,
it's fairly
redundant?
simple. It's
just
it's
a little
very
peek
redundant.
behind
Yeah.
the curtain, everybody.
What's the purpose of that then? Like, why is it redundant? It seems like a waste
It's
Yeah.
basically just all different, slightly different flavors of
of the
the
same,
same
thing.
thing.
Gotcha.
Oh,
But people will go to war over
yeah.
those slight differences.
Oh, I mean, but
Sure.
I love it when, because I don't know, but I have mini ones, right? And so mini mixers, and like I'll be like, I know what these buttons do, and then I'll watch someone on like this documentary, and they're like listening, and they're getting intent, they're just, turning all these knobs, and I'm like, you fucking don't know what you're doing. Like I know that you know that you don't know. So that's really fun.
Interesting. So it's all a lie.
Got
It
a little,
really is.
Got a
It
little
really
in
is.
the know, in the insider scoop, ladies and gentlemen. You're learning here.
Yeah. When I hear like an audio engineer, like I think back to I was thinking about this on the car ride over here because I was listening to some music I used to listen to a long time ago.
Probably Derek's band.
Probably, I was one of the big
One of the big ones.
yeah. And I was thinking about when I was younger, and I've noticed this with kids too, is like when you hear music, it just sounds like one big noise.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, like if you told me to pick out the guitar in there, like I'd be like, I don't know, it's just like one sound. Like I couldn't pick out drums. And it wasn't until I kind of got interested in music where I was like, oh, there's bass in there. I can hear that. I can hear like different aspects of it. But I remember even as a kid, I was like, it's just like a wall of sound, and I can't even differentiate anything in there.
I think that's interesting because I try to remind myself of that, like to treat the song as an instrument, and like really zoom out and look at the big picture, and
Right.
because that is how the majority of people enjoy music, is like not digging into
Exactly.
every element, but like what's the whole thing doing?
Yeah.
What's the whole emotion
Right.
transferring?
Like I think besides like a solo of some sort,
Yeah.
most people like take the song as a whole.
Yeah.
And it's like anybody that's hasn't played music, they like a song because they love how the whole thing fits together, which I think is probably a good sign of like the engineering is the mix is, everything is equal in some aspects. And I was just thinking about that. I was like, man, I'd be a terrible engineer. Like I have the worst ear for like that kind of stuff. And my tiny little examples of like messing around with music, I was like, I don't know. I haven't even mixed or mastered. Or
That is the one thing with music production I don't even like, right? Because I'll get to the production side, the making of, ladies and gentlemen, the like creating the instruments, the recording, right? That's what I love. And as soon as I get into like, oh, you're gonna turn it down 3,200 hertz, and it's like 1,400 hertz, and I'm just like, oh no, I feel like I'm in math class or something. And so I haven't even like dove into that. So you have. So let's kind of tell us kind of more what that is, because I think there's a lot of people who understand that there's music and there's mixing and there's mastering and there's recording process. But like let's talk about when Thera, my band, we came into, and you just record vocals, but like talk about like a recording session. What is that? What do you do on a daily basis?
So it really depends on the like what we're recording, because we do a lot of different types of productions, from film and TV and agency work to music and all that. But my kind of overarching question that I have in mind and usually ask the clients is, what are you wanting the listener to experience? And what sort of world are you wanting to put the listener in? Because once you figure out that world, then you can kind of, I like to think of what I do visually. And so like kind of creating a visual landscape with audio. And so you can decide like, okay, I want this person to feel like they're in like this little cocoon.
Okay.
And and it's very dark.
Have you got some weird,
clammy?
You got some weird like answers to that question?
Yeah. I have.
I want you to feel like they're dying.
Yeah.
But they're gonna live forever.
They're in a dark room, but it's lit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's very bright.
lots of juxtaposition.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you haven't thought about this, have you?
No, I mean, I would never think of that because it was always like, I think of just not even music, but like sound. I just want crisp, clear, like, but I understand that that's not for everybody because, you know, even coming from the guitar world, like I always thought of amps, like there was a very specific sound I wanted. And then you start looking into other genres of music and you're like, oh, they want the opposite of it. They want fuzz. They want this and this. And I'm like, I hate that. Yeah. But obviously
you wanted the chug, 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 chug,
like
chug,
like certain sounds, and then I'm like, there's no way other people love this stuff. And then certainly, you know, somebody's like, give me the grungiest fuzzy amp that you got.
All mids.
Right, exactly.
Mids,
or I want to scoop the mids and like everything. And it's just like people have different tastes in what they want. And so you kind of have to you just cater to whatever the people want and have a, I don't know. That would just be too hard for me because I would be so one-dimensional in that aspect.
I've been working at that, like trying to. Some clients hire you because they want what you bring to the table and they want you to really like go full bore and do everything how you would want it done. And others want a very kind of neutral palette, and so you need to figure that out. And then that then determines all sorts of different things: mic choices, preamp choices, hardware choices. So like with when we recorded the Thera vocals, we had conversations beforehand about like what sort of if you wanted any sort of room ambience while you're recording vocals, and you're like, no, want it pretty dry and dead, except for gang vocals. So we did all.
We want to do it in the bathroom, specifically in the shower, which people have probably done.
Oh yeah. I'm sure there's been some crazy stories in terms of that whole aspect of recording. The studio world, like I always think of like what's it, Little Dicky's show, Dave.
Oh yeah,
and just like how he's always in the studio, like trying to do takes and stuff like that. And it always makes me think is like, what kind of recording sessions have you seen that like took the longest to get done? Like, has there been people that you've had in there where it's
probably
like hours? I was going to say, besides Stephanie, like who was the second worst person? No, I love you, Stephanie.
Let's call these people out.
Yeah, but like, have you had like marathon sessions where people just can't get stuff done?
Yeah, and generally the common denominator that I've seen with that is that they don't have an idea of what they want to accomplish before coming in. Yeah. And they're like, oh, we'll figure it out when we get in there. And I'm like, that's no fun.
Well, because generally it's by the hour for the most part, right?
Yeah, we do either by the hour or
by the day.
Or a day block.
Sure. Yeah, because I always think about that where the recording is like, you should go in there with at least a pretty solid structure of what you're trying to do, not only for money-wise, but like you're trying to perfect what you have in your head.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you go in there and be like, you know what, the magic is going to hit me when I walk in, that would be a very expensive lesson, I think. All right, guys, we got a 2 hour. I got $100 in my pocket. We gotta nail this.
I have had clients where they come in, they're like, I've got an hour's booked out and I want to record 12 songs.
Oh my gosh. No,
not gonna happen.
That just stressed me out for you.
It's those sessions are
they call me the one-take wonder. It's gonna be no problem. I'll probably have 20 minutes left, so will I get a refund on that?
Yeah, no, for real. I have had those conversations.
What are you gonna do with that extra 20 minutes?
Take lunch.
Do you find yourself drawn more to like bands and musicians, or do you enjoy more of the corporate work or the other like what's your favorite thing to get to engineer?
That's good.
There's no right or wrong either.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, but there is one specific answer I'm looking for. Like most
Thera is not coming up.
No, I was gonna say commercial work with Steven.
Those have been very enjoyable. Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Aside from that, in close succession,
I fished it for it. I got it. Yeah. I got it.
Steven, put the gun down. Okay, he doesn't have to say it.
This is a video podcast now. People know.
It's under the table. I can see it in the crack deck. I would say I generally prefer working with artists, musical artists.
Yeah.
Over the past year, I've really been enjoying doing kind of more stripped back acoustic stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
And then also with the film side of things, one of my favorite clients that we have on that is The Great North, which is a
it's like a TV
animated show. It's the creators of Bob's Burgers.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's got
I
didn't
know you worked on that.
Yeah.
I saw
It's
that.
kind of like the Park Ranger one.
No, that was Barry Brickle or something with Daniel Tosh. This one's like kind of
Nick
newer.
Offerman.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
one, I saw that advertised.
Brickleberry.
Brickleberry. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I didn't know you worked on that.
Yeah, that's the only thing I've gotten credited for on IMDb.
Oh, nice.
You know, I was gonna pull that out because I have been trying to get on IMDb forever, and so when I was researching, you today, and there's not much out on you on the web, and I'm probably sure that's probably by design.
Yes,
but I saw that you had an IMDb credit, and I was like, God damn it, dude! I've been working for years.
You'll get one that says that you had Derek on your podcast. So that's where your credit's gonna come from.
I've done the bottom of the barrel work, and I'm like, this is my IMDb credit. I'm like working the job, and I'm like, I worked Alaska Daily. I was like, this is gonna get me.
It's gonna be on there.
same. Yeah. Nope.
Same.
Yep.
No, it didn't. I was a little bummed about that because I was like, well, do I have to tell them?
Yeah.
Do I text someone?
By the
Who do
way,
I text?
when does this show up on my
Hillary?
yeah.
Remember when that guy who got you your eye drops? That was me. Okay.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Right?
I did get her eye drops.
Jeez. Yeah, that is the coolest thing I've heard. Back to the engineering.
Sorry.
No. We like rabbit trails. We like to talk about all sorts of things, and they're no longer called bunny trails, and they haven't been for a long time.
I call them bunny trails forever. And then Kyle informed me
paths.
that bunny trails are apparently a path down.
It's the happy trail on a female.
On a female.
I did not know that.
On a lady.
Yeah.
And I did not know that either. And so this whole time
I didn't know that either.
We're like 80 episodes in, and Kyle pulls this out on the podcast, and I'm like, oh, well, God, I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Like this whole time, people
Careful
have been
what
like,
you say.
these people. I know that was one thing. Someone, I was talking to someone today, and they were like, I don't know if I can come on the podcast. I'm afraid of what I'm going to say. I'm like, dude,
we are
afraid
every day,
every week. I'm like, I have to listen. Sometimes I'm like, did I say that? Do I need to delete that?
We just accept we're on borrowed time. And one day it will be.
Someone's gonna go back to episode 2 and be like, you remember?
Yeah.
You can't run for president because of this.
Back when I got my Peloton, I was talking about how my crotch was going numb. I was getting perineal numbness.
Yeah.
Bunny trail numbness.
Yeah. Oh, even worse. Yeah. The whole area was going. And so I'm like, I'm sure that'll be lovely to listen to in like 10 years. Be like, my old junk was numb. It was crazy. So there's things in the past that, deserve to stay in the past.
Clearly, we get off track. Let's talk about engineering and music.
Yeah, get back there.
God, that is. So
I think this is a testament to how dry of a subject engineering is.
No, I think there's just so many people that just accept that it gets done and don't even consider all the work that goes into it, because you're wearing a lot of hats during that whole thing, because you're not only trying to give the person a product, but you have to do all the levers and knobs and all this stuff to get the right sound. And so I'm just curious, like, how did you learn this art form? I mean, that I would say is something that's so outside of my realm of expertise, and it's like, where do you even start with this? Did you have a draw to music as like a young kid, or back, baby. Where did music come in?
Okay, I had a very unusual upbringing, and part of that was I grew up in rural Alaska.
Okay,
and so music was not a very large factor of my life.
Where in Alaska? Rural.
Do you know where Chitna is?
I know where of Chitina.
It's fairly close to Chitina, like 20 miles out. Like
Okay.
on the
So you're out there. You're out
it's
there.
like a 4.5, 5 hour drive.
Okay.
So
let's do the map of Alaska right here.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Boom.
Okay. Yeah.
There.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, was born out there and grew up out there and ended up getting into music around, I think I was 14. And my brother-in-law played drums a little bit, and he showed me a beat, and I started just playing that beat for ages on the church's drum kit. Yeah, Still the beat that makes the most money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. 90% of the studio stuff is a variation of that.
Yep. I just like my beatboxing skills, by the way. Wasn't pretty good?
Yeah.
I've been working on them.
A lot of highs.
A lot of highs. I need to, get that low end. Anyway, continue.
So I started just kind of messing around with drums and started to. Some of my friends that in the area got a LimeWire. Started downloading music and stuff.
Yeah, dude.
I grew up in a very, very strict Christian environment, and so there wasn't really any sort of music.
Secular.
Yeah, secular and
really?
Non-secular, yeah.
What was your first download?
My first download? Well, I never had LimeWire.
That's a hard question to answer.
I mean, there's something you go in with like the intention. Like when I got Kazaa. That's what I had.
LimeWire, BearShare, Napster. I mean, I had them all. My brother had them all.
I remember one of the most memorable acquisitions from one of my friends was
acquisition.
What are you on a bank heist?
It was Dirt Off Your Shoulder by Jay-Z.
Oh man,
that blew my mind.
One. Yeah.
Oh no, they
had no idea.
Never heard it. I borrowed my friend's little like MP3 player, and I would go because we grew up on a farm, and so I'd go and like feed the cows and milk and all that stuff, and so I'd just be there with like
your
earbuds, just replaying that one song because that was the only thing that would fit on the MP3 player.
Was
that one song?
Oh wow!
Dirt Off Your
You
Shoulder.
just dated yourself, dude.
Yeah.
No, I mean like
we had that too.
That wasn't too long ago that the MP3 players like you could put 10 songs on there when we were.
I do remember, yeah. When I first moved up to Alaska, 2005, I had an MP3 player, 15 songs. I do remember that. So,
somebody was rich.
yeah, dude.
I'm sorry we didn't all grow up like you.
Bro,
silver spoon over here. 15 songs, guys. You hear that?
I bet it even had a screen.
Yeah,
it did.
Oh my god. You can go to Harvard. Yeah. No, I remember those first, like the little like clip on. Well, those two. Yeah. Oh, I was totally the kid that had the CD, the Discman in my jacket pocket.
Yeah.
And man, you were classy.
Yeah.
Like walking around with that thing. People knew. And then mine would get flipped upside down and stop, start skipping and all that stuff.
And you just had to keep walking.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna. I had Chumbawamba in there, tub thumping.
Money. Okay, so you're sneaking listening, which I think
Jay-Z.
the three of us have that in common. Definitely snuck listening to Slipknot.
I had all that
Limp
stuff.
Bizkit.
My dad would get on our family.
Linkin Park.
Linkin Park. For some reason, my parents
were okay with that.
Yeah, because they didn't swear. And I think I could get away with listening to it. And then they just didn't ask because they just assumed they don't hear swear words. Then it's good. It's
They
like,
must be Christian.
Exactly. They're not cursing. They're Christian.
Anyway, yeah. So we have that in common for sure. Growing up and being not sheltered for at least for my sake, but just not able to do that stuff.
I wasn't allowed to. I don't think. I wonder if there is a lot of kids. Like I think of the whole sheltered thing. You were kind of sneaking the Jay-Z aspect. I didn't know a lot of kids at that time that were just allowed to listen to whatever they wanted, though. I feel like that time of. And how old are you, Derek?
30.
30. Okay, yeah, perfect.
You're 30? Oh, you
You're
look
just a young
good.
buck.
You look good for 30.
Yeah, and I think that we've talked about this before. I think we talked about it with Nick, is that time frame. Like parents were really trying to crack down on like hip hop coming into kids' lives and like screamy devil worship metal. Like you had Eminem kind of around then, and all the parents were just deathly afraid of their kids being exposed to that. So I do think it's like a Christian thing, but I also think every parent was kind of like on watch for like parental advisory.
I do remember, it's funny, I was talking to Alicia last night, and I wasn't allowed to listen to Kiss. Because I think something we were watching.
Of course.
Well, because it stood for Kids in Satan's Service. But I mean.
Did it really?
No.
I was going to say,
that was like we were told.
The church started
like,
out with it.
Oh, he looks like a demon because his tongue comes out. And then Kids in Satan's Service. Yeah. So there's
Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
Do they have a daycare or?
Kids in social service or something. Yeah.
12 o'clock, we're actually doing a sacrifice right outside on the lawn. If you want to join us, parents, you're more than welcome.
Yeah.
I do remember one service, one of the elders got up and one of the preachers, he got up and he was like, completely serious, why don't we do book burnings anymore?
Oh,
and he tried hard to bring that back, book burnings and CD burnings. Actually, I think they did do some CD burnings.
Kyle, we recently talked about a CD burning.
Yeah,
book burning. That's one.
That's a scary one.
What are we living in the South right now?
Well, I was gonna say.
Well, a lot of
you look at Germany.
Oh well,
that's where I would think. Yeah,
they don't.
Sir,
take
do we need a history lesson here? Yeah, and so that was in church that they suggested that.
Yep.
Weird.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yep. Hey,
well, you know what?
Kind of not surprising though.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
No, it's par for the course.
Yeah. So you found Jay-Z, and so you were kind of that was your one song that you had access to. You listened to it probably 1.5 million times.
Yeah.
Was that something that kind of opened that door to like professionally produced music? That kind of like was like, how did they do this?
Yeah, and because I didn't really get into audio until later in life, but that really kind of that and a few other albums that I acquisitions, as I said, really kind of it got me passionate and excited about playing music, and so I just play along to those songs and to those albums, and then from there I decided that I wanted to go to I wanted to study music, and I wanted that to be my trajectory.
Jay-Z really inspired you, huh?
He did, but not enough, because I still ended up going to a Christian college.
Same.
Yep.
Same. For music, me too.
Yep. And so, but while I was there, I started doing session drumming at another studio in the area. And so that was my first time in like a real pro studio, and that was like kind of a mind blowing moment of like, holy shit, like this is some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And just that the whole process of knowing what to use to capture different emotions and how much specific gear can really affect that, and affect how something feels, and how like something as kind of subjective as that, like you can really have a lot of control over that with your the choices and how you understand frequency and things like that. So I started getting interested, and then some of my housemates that were studying production, I started just kind of asking them questions and looking over their projects and trying to figure out what they were learning, and then kind of just jumped in, got Logic, started messing around with making songs and beats and stuff, and then from there started getting into live sound, and I still do that from time to time for fun, and and so it kind of progressed, and that whole time like just soaking up anything I could eat with that, whether that was from someone that I would come across that knew about audio, that just like picking their brain and asking for feedback, asking them to critique my mixes and all that, or YouTube was
your
really
YouTube University.
Yep.
Well,
and Yeah, and then in the last few years, it's kind of moved into the main thing that's been helpful is kind of mentorship relationships with some really great audio engineers.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So
Yeah, like describe your first studio session. So you went to this school and then you went in to do studio drumming, correct?
Yeah.
And so had you been in any kind of studio before at that point, or just kind of knew what it was like?
I had been in like a very, very basic home studio
Sure.
setting before.
I remember the first studio I went into was at a home.
So a home studio?
Correct. And it was
it in a bedroom?
I have a
studio?
tough time remembering where it was. I think it was like in Palmer at this guy's house, and we felt very odd about. I don't even know how we found him. We paid him like $200 to like do 6 songs, and
Sounds about right. Back
it
then,
was
yeah.
very weird.
Yeah.
And it's all live takes, one take. Like all together.
Oh,
for
really?
men, yeah.
Oh, old school style.
It was not good. But anyways, I just remember going in there because, you're talking about kind of growing up in the middle of nowhere, kind of learning drumming, and then you're kind of put in this spot where it's like, okay, let's see what you got. Like I'm gonna record you all your flaws and all this stuff. And I think a lot of musicians have this idea in their head that they're like pretty good because that's why they're in the studio. And then I just wonder how many times they're like, this guy sucks. He's really bad. Because, I'd never played like guitar in front of like hardly anybody. And then I'm like, he's like, all right, we're doing your guitar solo. And I'm like, I don't know how to solo, but I'm gonna figure it out. And so I just wondered, like, did you have kind of like a realization like you were a good drummer, or you're like, oh, I'm not very good or something? Did you have that wake up call when you went into a studio?
It was definitely a wake up call of how I hear myself when I'm playing is not how it comes across to other people.
I feel you.
But
I feel that.
I feel you.
I feel that.
People are always angry when I play.
I don't understand why. They get mad at me.
They leave.
I don't
if
understand.
You could be in here.
If you guys heard what I heard.
It sounds great. I sound good.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, that was definitely an eye-opening thing, but it wasn't a really terrible thing.
Sure.
Like I didn't get fired, and they kept the recordings and they used them, and I was happy enough with them to like not make a big deal about like, okay, can we keep doing this part over a few times? But it was definitely for sure it was eye-opening in that it's because up until then, like in college and all that, like I had been playing live, obviously a lot, primarily, and just realizing that studio drumming and playing in general is a very different ballgame than live.
Yeah.
Than playing at a concert.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So
nothing to feel. It's very. I've just the very few studio sessions I've been a part of. It feels there's not the right energy like as a live show.
Yeah, and
it feels artificial. Like you're like trying to piece all these different pieces that normally gel in a live setting. You're like, all right, we got to do drums today, and it's like, okay, here's to a click track. And
I would say also as a baby band, you're playing like to a click track for the first time ever.
Oh yeah,
and so that's new, and then you're in this space where you're alone. If you're a drummer specifically, you're like alone, and everybody's through a glass window, and like how intimidating is that? At least like guitar player and bass players, we could just stay right inside next to everybody. Like, what do you guys think of this? I'm playing right now. Like, but the drummer's like secluded, like way out there.
Oh yeah,
I just felt bad for drummers.
They got a tough job.
I think what helped me with that was that like I got excited about the aspect or the kind of the thought that like I get to learn how to approach my instrument differently. And I'm not trying to recreate a live feeling.
Right.
I want to actually like, want to, have a lot more freedom to explore weird sounds and stuff that wouldn't work live, that wouldn't cut through a mix and et cetera. But there's just kind of not having this. For me, it was helpful not to have this like trying to attain what a live concert feels like in the studio, because they're
different for sure,
separate.
Yeah. Man, do you ever like think about kind of, you mentioned like YouTube and stuff like that. Do you ever think of kind of how lucky you are to be like in this age right now? Because I think about that with a lot of things. If I was born 20 years ago or 15 even, or whatever it is, was growing up during the 80s, like you wouldn't have access, because now I'm assuming with YouTube, you have access to top producers putting out content of how to exactly do stuff and how to troubleshoot almost anything in the entire world of the world. That you can find anything, right? And if it was 20 years ago, like you'd have to find a mentor of some sort, or you'd have to just spend years learning stuff that you could get in a weekend on YouTube.
100%.
Yeah, I think it is. It's absolutely a somewhat a leveling of accessibility for knowledge and for training that has, for a lot of fields like what we do, has been fairly niche and unattainable for a lot of people, because you have to be in like LA or Nashville.
Right.
And you have to be in those hotspots to be able to like get an internship at a studio and kind of climb the ladder that way. So yeah, it's awesome. It is also, it's easy to learn a lot of really, I don't want to say incorrect, but like techniques that aren't going to be helpful in the long run. Both with drumming and with audio engineering, I've found that I've had to unlearn a decent amount of things, but the positives to that far outweigh it.
Yeah. I'm really curious about something you brushed on just a couple minutes ago when you were talking about mentorship. And you're like, more recently it's about mentorship. What does that look like? What do you mean? What do you, I mean, if you can talk about your mentors, but like, what are you gaining from this mentorship? How does that look? How does you get your mentor? Because that's something I think, sorry, I'm like kind of interrupting, but that's something kind of where like we're interested in, like, you know, it's like we like asking questions and finding people, but also like, how do you get that mentor, like mentee relationship?
It's the main person that I have that with. It has never been something where I have like sat down with them and be like, I want you to mentor me.
Yeah.
It's been I recognize that this person is far ahead of me in their career of audio engineering, and they've got both developed skill and natural skill that is very impressive. And so they are someone that I am working towards becoming, not necessarily, I don't think you have to be like, stylistically, they're very different from what I do, but from their like technical ability, I really look up to them a lot. And so that's all to say, like, I don't think it has to, like, you don't have to find the person that you're like, this is who I want to be, like the carbon copy of.
Yeah, you don't say like, hey, can you be my mentor? You leave it to what the Christians would call an unspoken.
Yes, an unspoken.
Yes.
Yeah. And so just, and also like with this individual, I kind of tested the water per se, and like, send him some
Dipped
stuff
a toe in.
Like,
I'm going to stalk you
this.
forever.
Slide into
red light, green light.
Slid into the DMs.
You're going to try to get rid of me. No, you can't. I'm always going to be there.
Oh, man.
I'm sure that went over well. But yeah, like that's something that's like in every aspect of life. I mean, why not go to people that have more knowledge, more experience, and like are on a similar, well, they're on a further trajectory than you, but on the same one you want to be on.
Yeah. And the specific key, I think for me at least, has been like finding someone who was brutally honest and they're still kind.
Not a yes
but
man.
Yeah. And not just someone who's like, it's you're doing a great job for where you're at.
Yeah.
Like, but someone who actually is like, we'll pick you apart and cares about you enough to do that. And yeah, that's been the main, I think the biggest thing and it sucks at times. I was really feeling good about that mix.
Yeah.
It's my life's work.
I feel that.
Sucks.
I feel that.
Yeah, but that's important for growth. Like growth, unfortunately, always kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, depending on how quickly you want to grow. But like we've talked about this many times, is like there's always people, unfortunately. Friends are
there's always people.
Well, there's always people.
No, I'm there.
Like friends are the best and worst things because a lot of them want to only build you up.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that kind of hinders you from like getting anywhere because it's always like you send them a video or a song or whatever. They're like, this is sick. And you're like, but is it? Like, I don't really even think it is that great. And if you only go off of that and you don't have the people that really are the truth, and I think both of our spouses are kind of that for us. Like my wife,
100%.
Yeah, if your spouse isn't like being like, this isn't like your best work, like it hurts me when I hear that. But I'm like, thank you for like being the one that had to tell me what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Because that's what they should do, you know?
Yeah.
They got to tear you down, you know? It's great.
I was like editing a video yesterday and like I used 3 different songs and like Alicia was there and she was like moving to the first 2 songs and it gets to the 3rd song. She's like, this one sucks. And I was like, okay, I'm going to change this song.
What do you know? What do you even know?
Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
It's funny how like I find myself in the same thing, both with my wife and with other, like when I get critique, because like you
immediately jump to like defensiveness.
Yeah,
right?
Like these are the 10 reasons of why it has to be this way.
Yeah.
And you've already lost.
Yeah.
Like you've missed them.
Do you think that's like, because like in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm the creative one here. Okay. You don't know what you're talking about.
But
You're not
like
the creative
consumer.
one.
They're like the consumer.
Yeah. And I think it's taken me a minute to be like, because in the beginning of our relationship, I was like, I'm the creative one. I'm the professional. I run my own business. You don't. Right. And so it's like, but you're right.
They have the wallet that ends up paying for like the things that you create.
Or watching the video, or the people
like,
that you want to share the video, or whatever, pay for the product that you're promoting. And so it is interesting when you get those negatives. But there are those people who are like constantly like, dude, this is sick. And you're like,
it's not a bad.
You're like,
it's
that's
just
not what I was looking for, man. I'm looking for harsh criticism, dude. Like that's the moment I'm in right now, bro.
And then when I get it, I'm gonna crumble and
I'm gonna cry, but it's gonna be worth it.
You won't hear from me for about 2 weeks. It's gonna be like a stellar thing after that 2 weeks. Dude.
I'm never sending you anything else again, period. But thank you. That's kind of it's the harsh truth. But I mean, having a mentor, I think in any aspect is just like you got to accept you're gonna get your feelings hurt. But it leads to growth at the end of the day, whatever it may be. And so that's good.
Do you think now, I mean, we've talked about this with other guests on here before, but as a creative, as a person, I would imagine your job, you have to almost have perfectionism where you're like, no. Because like I mean, you're almost that guy that has to say no. You can't be like, well, it sounds good. You're like, no, do it again. This isn't what you want. This isn't what you want. And so like, how do you deal with that perfectionism? And how do you say that, like that negative, like nicely with tact, like a doc, what's that, bedside manner? Right. How do you go about that? How do you navigate that around that? And because I mean, there were moments too, when we were recording where you were, I would ask your opinion because I mean, I respect you and you're like way more advanced in audio than all 5 of us combined. And so we were like, what do you think? Like, what do you suggest? And you were like,
garbage.
You were like, but you were nicer because, and this is what made me think about it.
Garbage.
You were like, I would do it again. And that's a nice way of saying garbage. Like that sucked. And so like, I don't know, is that something you've learned over time, or is that something that just kind of like you're like you've gotten good with, you're okay with being honest and open with people from day one?
No, I'm terrible at that.
Oh.
I had to work on it a lot. And so I think probably that bedside manner comes from being terrified of confrontation.
Yeah.
But what I have found to be really helpful for how I kind of go through those situations is kind of in going back to what I was saying earlier about from the outset of a project, figuring out what the person's goal is for, let's say, a song. Like, what is your goal for what do you want the listener to experience? What do you want to experience when you're listening back to this and while you're creating this piece? If you have that, then you can use that as kind of the litmus test for the quality of what's happening. Is like, is this actually going to get to that end goal? And I think, especially coming from a church background where like perfectionism is hammered in, I've tried to have a different look of perfectionism or like musical perfection. It's not, for me, it's not about having everything exactly in tune and in time. It's about finding that space where it's achieving what it needs to achieve in that larger picture, and finding out when you are getting to that, what I will a lot of times talk with or say to clients is once we get to a point of diminishing return. So we're going to basically like find the arc of where this is as good as it's going to get, and find a nice way of saying that, because if you say that usually doesn't go over too well. But like, this is the right thing for this song and for this time period. Maybe in a couple months, if we work on it, it'll sound better. But for right now, this is the point of, if we go past this, we're not going to be doing ourselves any favors. So like learning to recognize that, and both with what you're hearing someone play and through body language as well. That's a really big thing that I watch for, is like when you start to see someone kind of check out body language wise, then you're like, okay, we're going to use the take before this was the sweet spot, and we're going to build off of that.
Perfect.
It was
nearly.
It was perfect for this.
Yeah. Let's remember, only Jesus was perfect. So let's move on.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. That you've kind of picked up those like mental cues or like moments where you can actually like spot like, okay,
the saggy shoulders, the head down.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of fascinating, because I remember the first time I ever was in the recording booth, and like I was a singer at that time. And basically I had done like, I'm a perfectionist, and that's kind of why I was curious about your perfectionism, because I feel like a lot of creatives, that's something we have in common. And we're like, no, it's not good. It's not good enough to put out. It's not good enough to put out. Like those songs, I'm just personal wise, those songs I did for Dan's thing, I was like, he was like, I need you to send those right now. And I'm like, they're not done. And he's like, no, they are. Like, and so you had to mix and master. And then like, I think those songs are great now for what it is. You're right. But there was that moment where I was like, it is what it is. Like, I can't tinker anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fascinating, but the perfectionism is something we have like in common, I think all of us. And so I think dealing with that is kind of an interesting thing, but perfectionism is almost in your job title. Like you have to be perfectionist. You have to be like on top of that game. And so what are some like tips and tricks that you kind of like do to kind of, I don't know, get in the zone? Because I feel like there's a thing of like, there's that moment when you first get to a studio. So, and then it's just like, okay, like, what are we doing? Like, you know, there's that awkward like thing. And then, you know, how do you get comfortable with like telling people like, do it again, do it again, do it again. Right. And then also like when, you know, like you're perfectionist, like you're like, okay, I'm going too far. Like I need to take a step back. And so what are the tips and tricks that maybe you've worked on or you've learned over time, besides like body cues or anything like that?
The environment is super important. I've learned if the space is really cluttered and chaotic visually, that is generally a that doesn't help anything. That usually does the opposite.
That makes sense. Interesting.
And that's all to kind of go with like my general approach with when people come to the studio. I want them to enjoy their time there, which for some people like that I have worked with, other producers that I've co-produced stuff with, their approach has been like very, very tough love, but like very kind of like old school rock and roll. Like, we're going to be here as long as it takes. And you're going to be, your fingernails are going to be falling off and like all this, that type of language.
Where's the riff?
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard that a lot. Yeah, I get that.
the sleeping bags out. We're going to have a slumber party here. That's the rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah. And I don't relate to that. And so that like, and there are people that do, and that's totally cool. But that's not something that kind of gets me going as a creative individual. And so that's not really something that I can put on other people either.
Sure.
So what I can do is I know that I create the best when I am happy and when I am in a, like, even not just happy, but in a clear headspace.
Sure.
And I'm not getting distracted by cables and just random shit around. And stuff. So trying to like remove those distractions and basically like getting to work as quickly and as smoothly as possible. Like you're talking about that process of like getting in, like, oh, like kind of like that awkward kind of milling around.
Yeah,
but like let's get to it. Like can we get you some water and all that, and like let's get right down.
Yeah.
Do you have like I mean, you've done like rock bands and stuff like that. Do you, because I remember like we brought in like some beer and stuff, I think when we were recording.
Wow.
And so like, do you ever
stepping over a line?
I don't think we were all over 21 either. That was also a red flag. But
rock
like,
and roll, baby. Guys
that are like recording, I just imagine, they need this environment that you're talking about. You're like, I need it clean and kind of polished to like produce my best. And a lot of musicians need, their vices to kind of like create stuff. Yeah. And so
what are you talking about, Kyle?
Like, meditation.
Talking about drugs?
And so like, do you have to turn that down, or like, how does that conversation go with, I got 2 hours and I'm going to need about 90 minutes to do a few things. So 30 minutes, we can get it done.
Do you have a bathroom?
Exactly.
No, my view of that is like, I give them basically a blank palette, a blank canvas. And then, so as far as like distractions from,
is it a mirror?
Yes, a
very clean mirror,
reflective
surface.
You could, if you get close to another podcast about, I think it was one of the consoles at Electric Lady, and it was custom made by SSL with a mirror in the producer. In the producer bank.
Nice.
Of course. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
For a little booger sugar.
Yeah. But yeah, like that's that, funny. Whatever the artist then needs to like get in the zone.
What they think is good for the,
Yeah, but my goal is to like not have any of my shit cluttering their space.
Right. Because I can imagine, there's like the point of no return, you kind of have to juggle that with, we're trying to finish something here and, you got to find that line of going too far.
I usually, that's when I say, hey, let's take a break and grab some food.
Yeah. Smart.
Usually what happens. And if sometimes that's been like later in the evening, and then by the time they get some food, they're like, I'm getting kind of tired. Let's call it a night. I'm like,
wrap it up, baby.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And some of those things make them not get tired. So that's another thing too. Yeah.
Go all night. What do you think it is about engineering that, made you a senior audio engineer? Right? Because you could have stopped at junior, man. I mean, you could have stopped.
You could have just stopped at, audio
engineer. You could have, No, I'm curious. I'm like, what is it about engineering that makes you come back to it every day and that you love it and that you're excited about it? Take your time here too.
I would say when I get to work on something and see people have an emotional reaction to it.
Yeah.
And I remember like those moments when I had like those initial songs like Dirt Off Your Shoulder or whatever, when I had like emotional reactions, whatever the emotion is, you remember those things stick with you. And I think those things are really powerful. And one of the really beautiful things about music is that this little stereo MP3 file can carry so much weight to it and can completely change someone's entire day or for however long of a period. It can really be incredibly impactful and be I know for myself there's been like times where a song has really like it's been what I needed in that moment. And like so that opportunity to create that for other people and to be able to get out of the way of artists and help them do that for themselves also, like have those moments for themselves. Because I think music it's very cathartic for the makers as well. So yeah, those are the things that keep me coming back is like seeing that emotional reaction, seeing that excitement.
The final product.
It's very selfless of you too, because like I feel like you kept saying like to help them or to see them, and so it's kind of cool. Like you're like doing it, you know, for someone. I mean, you were doing it, you know, for yourself because we always are doing stuff for ourselves, but also like you're focused on their creative process and you're also falling into their, you know, line, I guess, to work with them. And so I think that's probably fascinating too, because you probably see a lot of creative processes, total different styles, because you worked with Bumua, like who I've been trying to get on this podcast for like months. So if you're listening, but like, and you've also worked with Josh Ritter, who I listened to a long time ago. And so like, the creative process, what is something like that strikes you as that, I don't know, fascinating about it? Because I found it very fascinating. Have you seen different processes that you've kind of like, oh, this artist did this, I'm going to take that and kind of make that my own? Or basically, you know, what have you seen that's inspired you from another artist? I'm very curious because creative processes, I think I'm like, just, I don't know. It's a magical thing, right? When you get in that zone, and like, what are some things that people do that you've witnessed
just
to
the
get
drugs.
in that zone? Just the drugs. Just there's always a mirror involved.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine you've been in a lot of recording sessions, and then there's been like some time where people are like, you know what? Okay, let's hash this out. How do they hash it out? Like Josh Ritter, because I was listening to the album, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. First off, because it's like in my head, it's phenomenal work, or reminiscent of his older work, and you know, like how does that kind of coincide with your creative process? Is that kind of like conflicting for you sometimes? Or is that kind of just like, all right, whatever you want?
Which Josh Ritter album were you listening to?
Sawgrass for Your Soul. Maybe that wasn't it.
No, I did. Truth is a Dimension, both infinite and blinding was the EP.
Oh,
I don't know.
I think
that one's on Bandcamp. He put it out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's why I wasn't listening to it.
Yeah, Steven's
because I used to listen. I used to listen to the historical conquest of Josh Ritter. That's the one I used to listen to a lot because Relevant Magazine, if that rings a bell for anybody, they did a cover on that, and I was like obsessed with it because I loved Relevant Magazine. So I listened to the wrong album. All right. Well, let's talk about how it worked, anyways.
Yeah. What I think that definitely ties in because working with Josh, his approach was what I kind of what got me reinvigorated about music, especially. It was very much so about being in the moment, and there's like we've said a few times, like there's so much about audio engineering and my work that is extremely tedious and repetitious, and just like a extreme magnifying glass, trying to kind of get rid of any blemishes or imperfections. And what I really loved about working with Josh was that he was very much, his goal was to capture a moment in time, and to be okay with there being some warts in there and some things that maybe if he did it again, he would do differently.
Some like imperfections.
Yeah, like a little thumbnail clicking on the body of the acoustic guitar, like little things like that, where most of the sessions that I'm in, people are like, "No, clean that up, take that out of there."
Okay.
But with him, it was like, no, the overall, the goal was to capture a moment in time. And
Right.
I love that.
And where those songs were, he loved the moment that he was in with those songs. And I think, if I remember correctly, he talked a bit about how songs have a life. And so they were feeling like they were in a really good spot in their life. And so he wanted to capture that. And so the whole outset of him coming in, he was up here for the museum brought him up for a show. And then he emailed us and he was like, "Hey, I want to book a couple hours. I just want to record some demos." I forgot who he was. And so I was like, fuck, we're so busy. We're about to fly to Juneau for celebration the next day. And I was like, man, I should be packing all our, like, my audio gear for that. I was like, okay, fine.
Oh, I get, yeah.
And so I roll up to the studio and he's already there. And I was like, wow, so he's early. Wow, this is
professional.
Professional. And he was like there with like one of like really high end, I think it's the Mono is the brand, the guitar cases, like the flight cases, and like,
oh, okay.
Oh,
that's
fancy.
That's fancy. That's a traveling musician. And then I real quickly looked through my emails, like, oh, and
Today
so
just got a little better.
Yeah, so we went in, and his whole thing was like, oh yeah, I just want a laptop with an interface and a microphone and a DI.
Oh,
because I just want to do some demos. And I'm like, well, when you rent the studio, you get me. So
you get the full experience, baby.
Yeah. So we're gonna set this up right. And I did.
Interesting.
And then it was, and again, like to speak to that moment of that we captured, he ended up, I think he recorded like 10 songs in like
30 minutes.
Yeah, it was under an hour. He did them each once.
He's one guy that could do that.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
That was really special to see. It was very, very impressive. And then he went and listened back to me. I was like, oh wow. Okay, let's mix 5 of these right now.
Oh my gosh.
So we mixed those in all 5. He picked the 5 that he wanted to mixed all 5 in, I think it was under an hour. Around
you guys were
minutes.
zooming, dude.
It was like I basically just one pass through each song, and as we were going, I was writing in all my automation and all that stuff. And then once it was done, he was like, all right, send it to me. I'm sending it out to my label, and I'm gonna release this.
And they just put that up?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Easy.
I want to find Bandcamp now.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And I'm not saying that like I worked on it. It really is like a very great example of music being a moment, and like focusing on that. And like what you're saying, like the song is the instrument, the song as a whole is what we need to focus on. And and not, it's hard. It's something that I try to really own, because it's so easy for me to get into the weeds and to get into the details and to care too much about things that don't make the sum of the parts better.
Right.
And so that was a really, really great reminder of that.
Can you do something for me? Like, so as like, talk to me like I know nothing about music. Can you describe what mixing and mastering is in a nutshell? Like if somebody they always see people going into a studio and they record and then they just assume like save as and airdrop
And
it to
send
me.
it out.
Like
Yeah.
what is
airdrop it to iTunes.
right? Yeah, like and then it's up there for sale. Like what is those
How
aspects?
naive. Sorry.
Yeah, in a nutshell, like just high level.
I would say mixing is really about finding the balance between all the parts to where everything has its own space that it's living in within the mix, and it's not stepping on the toes of another instrument and making a pile up and creating mud, or like on and it's really about figuring out what you want to kind of have the spotlight at different points in the song.
Gotcha.
And what's fun about it is like you don't, it's that spotlight you don't just set and forget. You can move it
throughout the
song.
Yeah. Take stuff down, put stuff up.
Yeah.
So it's more, I mean, I understand it's more in depth, but like it's trying to equalize like volumes of different instruments and maybe changing that throughout the song, but it also has to do with maybe changing frequencies of some of the things so that it cuts through.
Yep.
Like I always hear that, like it's got to cut through the mix, like stuff like that. So I've just always, the frequency aspect, like Steven said, it's like calculus. Like I just never know what lives within what frequency, and like even just throwing audio on videos a lot of times, and then you throw a voice in there, they're like, oh yeah, you want to cut this level, push this, and I'm like, what? Like I'm just gonna use the auto, whatever. But
the only time I've ever gotten like sucked into like frequencies and like listening to a song that I produced and then being like, oh my gosh, low end, bring up 1200 and then take down 25, stuff like that, was when I was super fucking high. Because I would just like get high as soon as I got off of work at like 1 a.m. when I was working in a restaurant, and then I would just work till 5 or 6 a.m. and then just like and then I'd wake up and be like, oh God, I probably ruined it. And then sometimes you wake up and you're like, that's really good. Sometimes, most of the time, not so much.
Yeah.
You just get into it and you're like,
you reach that point of diminishing returns.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
You went over that far too many
circle
times.
back.
Yeah.
Good circle back.
So for the mastering aspect, like what is that in a nutshell? Essentially, whenever somebody's
that is
always
something that no one talks about. It happens behind closed doors,
right?
And no one understands it. Not even.
It's
not
actually
even
a
mastering.
button you
It's
press.
just
really
making
is.
it louder.
Yeah. No, in a sense, it is bringing the overall volume of because when you're working with a mix, you've got all the separate tracks going, and you're finding that balance in how they kind of work together with all those separate layers, and getting them to be cohesive. With the mastering, then you have just the stereo file. And so you are using EQ, compression limit, and limiting to increase the overall long-term loudness of that to where it's at a commercial standard. And you're also, it's kind of a final stage to add some life and identity to the song. And you get, because you get to use kind of broader stroke, like a broader stroke paintbrush at that moment, to where you can kind of like, okay, I want the whole song to be brighter, or I want the whole song to be really mid-focused. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell.
Gotcha. So the mixing is kind of doing specific things to tracks to kind of equalize it out, and then the mastering is almost like I think of a compound clip in video, like when you combine them all and then you adjust from there. Yeah. That's like essentially what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the mixing is also where you get to have fun with like cool effects and like
throwing it over a track and then
like weird delays and harmonizers
and
all that kind of stuff.
That is the one thing I do know, like, when I send my tracks to a mixer and master or whatever, and then they bring it back and I'm like, holy shit.
You don't use Derek?
I have.
Okay,
actually,
yeah.
I have.
Okay, yeah.
Pre-Derek, and this is 2019. So I mean, not that long ago, but also very long ago. And anyway, so he sent me back, and then he would like take parts away and then just let the vocals, moment happen. And then he would put delay on like one thing. And then in the background, I'm like, ooh, that little shimmer in the background. I like what you did. So it does have that little, like, going back to like the creative process, like that's kind of like you're able to like, oh, I hear this. Like, I'm just going to do it. Like, and it's kind of nice. Yeah. And like, as an artist, sending something out and then hearing something back and then being like, oh, that was a great spin. I would never have done that myself. Yeah. So I think it's appreciative of like that creativity that you guys can, you provide to a track. That's something that like, me in my bedroom, just cooking up beats, wouldn't have heard. Yeah.
I got a question for you. Oh. What is probably your favorite song with the worst mixing and mastering? That is like a famous song. Like, what's the song that you're like, I love this song, but it absolutely is trash in terms of
it's probably
production.
Thera. No. Witness the End.
Yeah.
Any one of
the vocal engineering was superb.
Yeah, everything else, absolute
garbage,
dog shit.
They should have just been
just cheeks,
just vocals on that album.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Because I mean, there's
the one thing that comes to mind. It's not so much on the mix; it's more on the performance.
Okay.
Shit, what's that Bruce Springsteen song?
Will Smith, Get Jiggy With It.
It's the slap.
Yeah. Na.
Those are. Oh man. Okay. Now, if we're talking about some really rough mixes that I still love, is a lot of the NWA stuff.
Oh,
okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I should listen to that. We should. We can't really play it, but
we'll get in trouble.
My mom listens. Okay, I don't think she'll like this.
Mom, check them out.
Yeah,
they got some like a gospel
NWA,
tracks.
Mom. Northwest Airlines.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like is that frustrating to you when you hear songs that are like big, maybe on radio or play, and you're like, who mixed this? Like, because they probably got paid.
Yeah, that my wife and I have a joke about that. It's usually more with who mastered this. Is like that's our joke, because that's an easy one to tell if like someone fucked up. Is like there's level imbalances and stuff. But if I love the song, I don't care. If I'm meh about the song, then I'm like,
who
dropped the ball?
Yeah,
right. What?
Is there no pride in your work?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's not ruined, but jaded you in the music world? Because like, I feel like there's some sort of like being unaware of all those details that makes you allowed to kind of enjoy all music. Cause you're like, oh, it's just like,
it's like movies.
Yeah. Once you see how, the sausage is made, it's not as fun. Cause I always think of that, like when I listen to a lot of Metallica. Like I hate some of the things I hear. Like
I hate the snare drum.
The snare drum is like famous, and like some of the bass, like on the old like Cliff Burton stuff. You're like, well, that sounds like that's really loud. And I mean, they messed up on the one album that was like, but whatever.
And
like
they just left it. Yeah.
And it's like when you don't know how that stuff is done, you just are like, oh, that's just music.
Yeah.
And so, do you feel like that's in some ways ruined music for you?
Yeah, it's made me a lot more quick to write stuff off and not give it a chance. And perfect example of this is recently. I don't know if you guys have seen there's a new, I think it's called the karaoke feature on Apple Music, where you can it's not on everything, but on some songs you can adjust the level of the vocals.
Yeah.
What?
And it's after I've thought about it, I think it's pretty cool. Because it does it gives you an experience with the song of like getting to actually sing it yourself, like if that's what you like doing. And
how am I supposed to sound good if I don't have the vocal track behind me?
Well, that's what then you take the vocal track and you max it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. But so this all to say, I saw that my wife and I were sitting around one evening and I put on a song and I went to look at it's when you open the lyrics tab. So I did that and I saw that thing pop up. And in a lot of the like online forums and stuff that I'm on with audio engineers, there's been a conversation the last few months about streaming services starting to do basically a self-mixing feature, similar to Kanye's whole thing with the little player, the stem player.
Yeah.
And so everyone on those forums is like just fucking up in arms. Like, this is the worst thing that's ever going to happen to music going on. And I get a lot of the frustration because there is so much of what I like myself and other audio engineers do is take things that we had no control over and try to make them magical. Mm-hmm. And so there's so much work and detail that goes into that to then have that balance to be able, like, for someone else to just be able to mess with it and it's like, it's scary.
Mess with your final product. Yeah.
And so my initial reaction when I saw that, I was like, I was looking at my phone and I was like, shit, like, it's happening. And my wife, Ainsley, was like, what's wrong with you? Like, what is the big deal? And we ended up having this big argument about it. And what I realized was that and this references before about that moment, like when you get excited about a song for the first time, and like you get excited because it's hitting you on an emotional level, and everyone hears music differently because no two people's ears are the same, like both from use and from with your age. Like, no one hears something the same way.
Right.
So that type of feature, what I realized, like, that's so people can find that balance that actually excites them, like that gets that emotional connection for them. And that was kind of a flip for me of like just remembering of why people listen to music and not to be afraid of those like advances in how music is distributed and delivered to the people it's actually created for.
Yeah, don't be such a boomer about it.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. And I was like, I was really like, I could hear myself saying it. I was like, I am sounding like a boomer right now, but I don't know how to not feel these things.
You got to be open to change because it will come eventually. You got to kind of adapt.
As a producer, that excites me because like, you know, I remember listening to like this band called Bring Me the Horizon, right? And they have like the first album they added electronics on, like the producer of one of our albums, he got the stems, he got the recording file, and so we listened to it, and he would solo, and he gave me all the tracks, and so I went through them, and I'm like, there's so much happening there, and it excited me, and so that aspect really excites me. As instrumentalist, that might not be the best. Like, there's moments where, like, we did, you know, a breakdown, dun dun dun, dun 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 dun. He would take the good strike, dun 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 dun, and he would just you just copy paste, and so you hear that you solo that track, and it is clear as day, like copy paste. But in the grand realm of everything, you don't hear it. So in that regard, I'm a little nervous about that.
Yeah,
but
what it got me, like, because I still like, that still gets me nervous. What I am excited for then, like trying to like reposition it into something to basically work towards, is like, if things are going to be split down into stems, if that's where things end up going, then I'm going to make the best fucking sounding stems. So
that's sick.
You can do whatever the fuck you want with them, and they're still going to sound awesome.
Right.
So, I mean, it's going to be more work, but I think you got to find those ways to stay excited about.
And that's pushing yourself too. Like, all right, well, things are changing. Like, I, need to change too, whatever that looks like. So I love that aspect and like that mentality of moving forward and being okay with change. Because sometimes, I mean, of course, like with video, and it's like this AI shit that's coming out, and like Adobe Podcast.
Yeah.
That's like now, all these plugins I bought are useless because it's like, fuck, I can just upload free, to this free software. It's like, okay, well, that's something and everybody can do it. So it's like, but how do you navigate around like the AI where you can generate video where I don't need to be there, or generate a talking head person where as a filmmaker, I don't need to be there. Yeah. And so it's same with audio, like how do you navigate those? And so that's a really good way of looking at it. Like, you know what, that sucks in the beginning because that's where our brain goes. It's like very negative. Yeah. But then like, you're like, oh, this is actually like, this can be a good thing. And then you push yourself to get better and then to become that necessity. Like I'm needed. I still am needed. Yeah. Which I think you still are, Derek. Just FYI.
Yes. Quality overrides everything. Like, no matter how easy stuff gets to be made, like there's always a market for premium. Yeah. Like I don't even need to tell you about like the audiophile, like groups out there. Like it almost, my dad likes to think he belongs in that because he's always telling me about like these MP3 tracks, like what kind of quality.
He's got like a JBL speakers.
Oh no, he 100% has all of the audio equipment and all the headphones that he could possibly buy because he's not ready to give up and go to MP3s, right? And I'm like, Dad,
is he a wave guy?
Yeah, and
WAV.
Yeah, in the hot. That's probably what it calls.
Is that really what?
No.
Oh, I was like,
but shit, I hear that.
I hear the 512s, and it's just like there is always going to be that market for people that like at least think they're getting the highest quality, even if they aren't. Like, so I'm never worried about. I
can't tell the difference.
Well, sure, and I don't think the normal consumer can, but there's always a good chunk that think they can that will pay top dollar for stuff.
Absolutely.
So I think in that industry and in a lot of industries, there's always going to be niche people that want premium.
Yeah. So what's next? So, because I want to talk about this too, and this is something I want to talk to you off the podcast too, but we'll just talk about it on the podcast because we're open with everybody. So you were awarded the Rasmussen Foundation Individual Artist Award last year.
Yes.
And I was curious about that, so I hit you up and I texted you. I said, "What is? I'm curious. Like, I have a short film idea. Is that something like I could apply for? So how did you go about that? What was that about? And then also maybe navigate that into like kind of what's next. Like, what are you working on next? So a full big question.
Yeah,
and go.
Buckle up. I am a very slow talker. So I applied for the Rasmussen Individual Artist Award at the start of 2022, and I am very grateful to have received it. And the scope of what I applied for is something that a project that I've been trying to figure out how to get off the ground for a good handful of years, and finally just decided to do it. And basically what I'm working towards and use this grant as a stepping stone for is I'm working at creating a sponsorship fund for Indigenous songwriters and musicians. And I've kind of broken it down into like how I want to, like Rasmussen was my first step. And then from there, I have my like a 2-year and then a 5-year goal. My 5-year goal is that I'm working towards having the funding for sponsoring 5 full-length albums for separate artists at no cost to the artist, and that's covering all the recording costs, all the production, all the distribution, some sort of merch package and advertisement package as well, and then some video elements as well. So that is kind of that's my 5-year goal with that, is to be able to per year do 5 full-length albums sponsored. And the whole reason behind that is there's several different pieces to it. One of them is that I know personally how important representation is in the arts, and specifically in, like, for myself within music, and how impactful that is on how you view yourself and how you view your community and your family and your people. And so for myself as a Indigenous a musician and artist, that was one thing that always throughout my whole life of, especially like once I started getting into music, I was always looking for fellow Native artists and that were releasing stuff. And there's a lot out there, but there is a very, very, there's a very big lack of access.
Sure.
And that comes from a lot of different things. The main thing being institutionalized racism in how the basically America has been founded, the U.S. has been founded, and the whole process of taking the first peoples on these lands and basically kind of pushing them off further and further, and then sequestering us onto primarily the worst pieces of land
Parts, yeah.
in the country.
Yeah.
And so there's no opportunity for financial stability based off of that, of not having any sort of resources on these lands. And if you look at a lot of the most financially impoverished areas in the U.S. are on Native American reservations. And so when that is the environment you grow up in, and you are in, there is the access to, if you're an artist, having your music recorded and available to the world, that ability goes down drastically. And so basically what I have been trying to figure out over the past few years is like, I'm not a singer, I'm not a front person of a band, I'm kind of behind the scenes audio guy. How can I help fellow Indigenous artists to be heard and be visible? And basically this landed on the sponsorship program. And another few layers to this of why I believe this is really needed is and important is that throughout the history of the U.S., one of the very key ways that our culture has been passed down is through music and through song, because up until in the last 50 years, a lot of ceremony and religious practices and cultural practices and gatherings were illegal in the U.S. for Native Americans to practice. So how we kept culture alive and going was through music and through song. So I think that's a really beautiful and powerful thing, and I want to continue to be able to be an asset to our communities to continue that process. And then the other key that's really personal to me is like, it goes with access, but it's how would I say this? Giving an Indigenous artist the opportunity to be visible in a world that has been designed to make us invisible.
Okay.
And that I feel very passionate about that.
Yeah.
And I also definitely want to say, this is not to say that there's not many, many, many incredible Native artists that have come before and have done really incredible work and paved the way for us now. I'm not saying that I'm the first in any way, but what I just want to be an asset and help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're the first on our podcast.
Yeah.
So, which is cool. No, I think I love that. And I think that's great. I'm curious, how are you going about finding the artists, or are you kind of letting them come to you? What? How does that process look?
So I already kind of have quite a few. Basically, the next schedule of projects already lined out pretty well, and it's come through.
Do you have the 5 slots filled already, or
I have more than that, but I have as far as so to back up the Rasmussen funding. What I pitched to Rasmussen is like the project award is amazing and I'm really grateful, but it's not enough to fund a full-length album. So I'm going to use it to fund an EP, which will then be used as further proof of concept for larger scale funding applications.
Oh, cool.
So the EP that I am working on currently and I'm nearly done with is for Witty Young Man. And she's a local artist, singer-songwriter, and we are, I would say, about 95% done with all the tracking.
Oh, wow.
And then in addition to that, we started working with that, and I had already been working with Witty on, we recorded a single together, and I used that to apply for the Rasmussen. And so it definitely felt right that then she get to be the first artist to be featured in this program. And then after I got the funding, another opportunity came up with Ashley Young.
Yeah, and we just saw her medium build.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So she has her EP of, it's like acoustic singer-songwriter tracks, and she had recorded it down in Boise a couple years ago. And so she was looking for that to be mixed and mastered. So I was able to kind of move the funds into where I was basically was really grateful to my boss, Rich Cooper. We were able to basically, he gave all the studio time for Witty's project to me for free.
Oh, wow.
And then I was able to roll those funds then into being able to do the mixing and mastering for Ashley Young's EP. And so
Rad.
I already have 2 EPs for that.
I'm excited to hear that.
It's dope. Yeah. That one is on Bandcamp already, but I believe it's coming out on
Wait, Ashley's or Woody's?
Ashley's.
Okay.
But she's putting it on streaming.
Heck yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I love that. I think that's so cool. And I think that's awesome as far as like you have such a passion for it. You can tell like you're giving voices of Alaska kind of a broader horizon to live off of. And then also in doing that, you're saying like, culture has passed down music over time. You're doing that, right? You're letting this live on some servers, some electronic Facebook servers or Spotify servers, but this will be able to be passed down for generations and telling different stories. And I think that's amazing. Cause I think music, and I think, this is total. And I know you get this, is like music is not just about the words or the instruments. It's about stories. It's about people. It's humanity in its rawest form. And so I think, you understand that and you're bringing that out in music. And I think this project, is really cool, which I knew of this sort of project, but I didn't know that full depth. And it sounds to me like, your understanding of music is on a higher form than most people's, because you're like, this is, not just for enjoyment. This is for like long form, like let's listen to this and like think about generations before, generations to come. Yeah. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's really awesome. And so we appreciate you kind of sharing that about everything.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
Yeah. So, you're doing this, you're doing the projects, you're doing, Woody's and Ashley's, and you're in the middle of working, I'm assuming, finding other artists to work with, and you still got your day job, which is insane. I know we're coming into the studio here with you soon, hopefully, I think, unless we have to push it off again. But what do you do on your free time? What is something that you enjoy
Non-music related.
outside.
Outside,
You know, are you a TV? Are you a film man? Are you a book man? Are you a podcast man?
Do you just like to
definitely-
live in silence?
Do you
for
go
about
by
12
man? You
Yeah.
know, it's like, I didn't ask your pronouns, so I'm just
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
My pronouns are he, him.
okay.
Got
it. Nailed it. Yeah.
As far as content, I love podcasts and audiobooks, and I do love being outside, especially during the summer. I mean, it's kind of
It's hard not
why
to
you
love
live
Alaska
here.
summer.
Yeah. So in the summer, I try to get out hunting and fishing as much as possible.
Nice.
And it kind of depends on the work, but
Yeah.
just that. Yeah, that's my main thing. Is like I know that especially growing up out in the woods, like for my mental health, I need to, especially during the summer, I need to make
Connect
the
with
time to
nature.
do that. Yeah, to get out there and be in the woods.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, it's-
Amen.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
How much do you got to protect your hearing? Like, is that kind of like your one thing you have to always be mindful of?
Well, I've got
I
to
think
protect
about guns
yeah.
and stuff. Like,
I always have hearing protection, which is like I'm pretty fast about getting it on if like I'm having to take a shot. But I'm also totally okay with missing a shot because I put it on. Because that like long term,
that's your moneymaker.
Yeah.
that and both my ears and like with drumming, like I've got to protect
Yeah,
my hands.
hands, yeah.
Yeah.
We both got to protect our faces. You know, that's kind of
We got those podcast faces.
it's mainly the
definitely.
voices.
Faces
but-
for radio. I remember the one time I played a show and I didn't wear earplugs because now I'll either have my in-ears or earplugs in. And the one time I didn't and like didn't have earplugs, we weren't wearing in-ears at that time. And I was August Burns Red, and we had just opened up, and so we're going crazy. And I love August Burns Red, so I was sitting right next to the speakers, and I was enjoying it. I was loving life, dude. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up the next morning, of course, hungover, bang over, I'm sore, and all I hear is ee, and I'm like, I did it one night. I let loose. Never again.
Yep.
Luckily, it went away, but I mean, of course, there's damage there,
Yep.
and so you can't afford that because those frequencies. For people that don't understand, like those will go away, and so you won't be able to have that fine tune of in ear. And so that's actually a serious thing where you have to cover up, man. Shooting guns, I mean, just listening to music at a loud level is enough to do some damage.
Yeah, I generally listen to whatever I'm listening to at pretty low volumes.
This just kind of came to mind. Is there like audio tracks to train you in different frequencies? Like, and then it's like,
do you remember when we played
hertz.
Whiskey a Go-Go and they were doing this? I've never heard this since or before, but the sound guys were playing this over the loudspeakers and through the monitors. You know, so I mean, you're shaking your head, you're nodding your head, so you clearly have heard that. But I remember hearing that and being
he's
like,
just trying to make you feel a lot crazy with
he's like, you fuck, what
this
the
guy
fuck, dude?
They pumped you. They pumped you.
Oh, these guys know what they're doing. They got the views going. What is that?
That is a frequency sweep, and that's a really great way that you can find those on YouTube or So it basically just plays a tone that starts at generally. I mean, a lot of times it'll be a 0, but you don't really start to hear it until if you're lucky around like 50.
Well, like we'll have heard it like 3 times, and Kyle's over there like, have you guys heard it yet?
It's like a puppy dog. So it just plays a tone and it sweeps up through the frequencies.
Oh, gotcha.
So I use that a lot for tuning, like my room. So you can hear, like, that's a really great way. If you put some speakers up in your room, just play like one of those frequency sweep on YouTube. And if you are hearing where there's like all of a sudden it's really loud and then it's really quiet, then that means that there's a buildup in this one area and then there's cancellation happening in another. And so that can help you decide how to treat your room, because that whole tone is the same volume. It's the same gain level.
Right.
In actuality, but depending on the room you're in, it'll like.
Oh, interesting. I've never. Oh man, my ears are not in tune. Apparently,
Yeah,
like
I'm
that.
always embarrassed when they have that, like, here's a tone, we're gonna start it here, and then like it starts getting higher.
Yeah.
And then it's like based on your age.
Yep.
And I'm always like, I want to hold out as long as possible, but I haven't heard anything for about 12 seconds.
I know. I
Just
have
keep nodding. Yeah.
I've stopped like listening to those specific ones.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no point stressing about it.
It's like a teapot. That's fun.
That is fun. Well, Derek, thank you, man. We appreciate you coming
thanks for having me.
on. That was a good discussion about what audio engineering is, mixing, mastering, music, recording, creative process, mentorship. I mean, we covered a lot of it. And then we also covered your amazing project that you're working on. Where can people go to find more about this? Or is there a place? Or is this it?
This is
like, hey, go to the Go Fix Yourself podcast and
you
listen
can hear
to
all
more
about
this.
If you have questions about that project in specific, or really anything audio or drumming or whatever, Instagram.
Cool. At
Derek _Haukaas.
That's-
DerekHaukaas.
All right. Perfect. Well, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you especially spending this late night with us and talking about, and all of our constant bunny trails.
Oh boy.
We're going back to it, baby.
We're bringing it back.
So anyways, well, appreciate you, Derek. And thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thanks for tuning in. Kyle and Steven will be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, check out gofixyourselfpodcast.com. And remember to always go fix yourself.